A summation of feminists reading the Canon, Luce Irigaray's concept of mimesis as reading strategy, written by Gertrude Postel, presented by Peggy Bloomer. Who is Luce Irigaray? Luce Irigaray is a prominent feminist philosopher and psychoanalyst. Her work focuses on how Western philosophy and psychoanalytic theory have historically limited women by positioning men as independent, self-defining subjects while relegating women to the role of nature or passive support. She argues that women exist both within and outside this system, marginalized and defined through male-centered frameworks. In her work, Speculum of the Other Woman, Irigaray critiques this bias, which she terms phallocentric. She advocates for a reimagining of gender, one that acknowledges men and women as distinct subjects. Her philosophy encourages women to define their identities independently, separate from male-centric traditions. Her ideas are highly influential in feminist theory and continue to fuel discussions around gender and identity. Key points of Irigaray's philosophy. Here are some critical insights from Irigaray regarding the role of gender in Western culture and her concept of how to inhabit Western philosophy. Now in her 90s, Irigaray's evolving perspective proposes that the Western philosophical canon should be broadened to include Eastern philosophy, which emphasizes a deep respect for the natural world. In her concept of the critique of the neutral subject, Irigaray critiques the supposed neutrality of Western thought, which actually centers on a male perspective, overlooking feminine subjectivity. She also emphasized the sexuate difference. She proposes that recognizing both masculine and feminine perspectives can deepen our understanding and enrich relationships. Her recent work highlights touch and breath as essential elements of connection in life, linking them to empathy and ecological respect. She contrasts Western philosophy's dominance over nature with Eastern traditions that honor natural rhythms, advocating for balance. Despite some marginalization in France, her work has made a significant impact globally, especially in feminist and gender studies in the United States. Mimesis in Irigaray's work. A central concept in Irigaray's work is mimesis, which refers to imitation, mimicry, or masquerade. For Irigaray, women use mimesis to fit into patriarchal structures in two ways. Affirmative mimesis. Here, women adopt established masculine ways of thinking to critique from within the structure. Transformative mimesis. In contrast, transformative mimesis involves playing with mimesis, where women use mimicry to expose and challenge gender biases within texts. As Irigaray puts it, to play with mimesis is to recover the place of her exploitation by discourse, making visible what was intended to stay hidden, masculine economy and hysteria. Irigaray argues that our society is dominated by a masculine economy, a structure that shapes identity and meaning around male perspectives. Within this framework, women's identities are suppressed. She uses the concept of hysteria to illustrate rebellion. The hysteric woman, as Irigaray describes, rejects traditional femininity, transforming her suffering into resistance. She becomes a symbol of subversion, challenging rigid gender roles. Mimesis as a feminist strategy. Here are Irigaray's major points regarding mimesis. Feminist strategy. Mimesis enables women to mimic masculine discourse and reveal its biases. Dual approach. Irigaray distinguishes between affirmative mimesis, working within the structure, and transformative mimesis, subverting it. Most feminist readings fall under affirmative mimesis, but transformative mimesis is more radical. In her analysis of Plato's cave, she sees the cave as symbolic of a patriarchal worldview that privileges a transcendent masculine mode of knowledge while denigrating a more immanent, embodied, and feminine perspective. She reinforces dualisms such as light, darkness, intellect, body, and masculine, feminine, which are set up in a hierarchical way that subordinates the other and aligns with her ideas about sexuate difference. In the cave allegory, the prisoners, bound in darkness, represent ignorance and lack of enlightenment. For Irigaray, this darkness is traditionally linked to the feminine and the maternal, which she argues has been historically repressed and denied. The allegory places enlightenment as something external and higher that must be reached by leaving the cave, a journey aligned with a masculine quest for transcendence. Irigaray sees this as marginalizing embodied knowledge, which could be aligned with a more feminine approach to knowing. The allegory also presents a clear split between the visible world inside the cave, the shadows, and the intelligible world outside it, the sunlight and truth. Irigaray argues that this dualism reinforces a masculine logic where truth and knowledge are associated with a male rational realm. At the same time, the shadowy interior of the cave is aligned with the feminine material realm. This division suggests that knowledge requires separation from the body and materiality, which Irigaray critiques as a masculinist distortion of reality. Language in Plato's philosophy, as exemplified in the cave allegory, is used to assert dominance over the physical and feminine. She argues that Platonic philosophy relies on a phallogocentric mode of discourse that seeks to establish clear, objective truths while marginalizing alternative, perhaps more relational forms of expression. The language of the allegory, which emphasizes hierarchy and enlightenment as upward progress, subtly devalues forms of knowledge tied to bodily experience and relationality. Irigaray suggests that a truly equitable philosophy would not seek to transcend the cave, but would instead recognize value in the relational and embodied dimensions of experience. Rather than privileging a journey out of darkness into light, she advocates for a more inclusive epistemology that values multiple perspectives and forms of knowing, including those grounded in materiality and the body. This view questions the Platonic ideal that true knowledge must always be above or beyond material existence. Irigaray contrasts a critical reading to rewriting of the canon of philosophy. Many feminist scholars critically analyze traditional texts from the outside. However, Irigaray takes a different approach by inhabiting the text. This means immersing herself within the narrative, which allows her to reshape its meaning from a feminist perspective. Elizabeth Weed explains that Irigaray's approach goes beyond intertextuality. It's a radical citationality, where she is not just interpreting, but actually writing with the author. Irigaray's deconstruction of the cave allegory exposes the ways in which Platonic thought may unintentionally perpetuate gendered biases by devaluing the feminine-associated, embodied aspects of knowledge in favor of a disembodied, masculine ideal of reason and transcendence. She calls for a more integrative approach to understanding that would honor the feminine and relational aspects of knowledge rather than marginalizing them. Irigaray's methods are influenced by psychoanalysis, especially Lacan. She looks not only at what a text says, but also what it omits. This focus on what's left unsaid reveals underlying contradictions. For example, in her reading of Plato, she interprets the cave as a womb, unveiling the overlooked maternal origins of thought. By engaging in transformative mimesis, she expands and questions the traditional canon, pushing the boundaries of established discourse. Irigaray's style is intentionally disruptive. She challenges fixed forms, encouraging feminist philosophers to not only critique traditional philosophical texts, but to rewrite them, exposing their foundational assumptions. Transformative mimesis offers a powerful tool for feminist philosophers to redefine male-dominated traditions by introducing subversive insights into the structure of language and meaning. To summarize, Luce Irigaray develops mimesis as a unique strategy for feminist engagement with the philosophical canon, as presented by Gertrude Postel in Feminists Reading the Canon, Luce Irigaray's concept of mimesis as reading strategy. By embracing both affirmative and transformative mimesis, feminist philosophers can either work within traditional structures or disrupt them to reveal and challenge hidden biases. Irigaray's approach encourages a rethinking of philosophical traditions, making space for a genuinely diverse understanding of subjectivity. Thank you for your attention and time.